because this session is entitled The Role of Technology in the Ever-Developing Islamic Investment Space. It's an on-stage fireside chat. And joining Vinita on stage, we have Gareth Lewis, Vice President, Partnerships and Enterprise from Facet. And we have Ranveer Singh Sashakul, Director of Marketing and Business Development from Message Spring, who is coming down now. This is the penultimate session, and then after this we have our final session, which will be on Islamic sustainable finance, unlocking the power of potential of Islamic investment. But for now, here's the fireside chat. Vinita, the floor's yours.
Hello. Hi. Can you guys hear me? All right, great. So this is an interview with two experts, and it's going to talk about technology and investments. So I'm going to go straight to, Gareth, maybe you can start us off first, because from the morning till now, we did talk a lot about innovation, and obviously technology came into the picture. There's a lot of discussion about like digital assets and AI, among that. So we've seen that in terms of the industry has been evolving quite rapidly, and technology has been very instrumental in that narrative, right? So what are some of the advancements shaping Islamic investments today as far as the tech perspective is concerned?
Thank you, Vinita, and good afternoon, everyone. Nice to see you as well, Andrew Tebber, Andrew Morgan. I'd love to say that you look like you haven't aged a day, but I'd be lying. But good to see you all. So in terms of technology, at the moment, obviously, the two key advents would be blockchain technology and tokenization, particularly of real-world assets. You've probably all heard this buzzword a lot at the moment. Real-world assets as a sector of Web3 and blockchain technology has experienced something like 1,800% growth in the last 12 months alone. And the reason for that, I think, is because what tokenization and blockchain technology affords asset owners is the ability to access new capital that they wouldn't otherwise be able to access. Now, if you're not familiar with tokenization in the context of a real-world asset, all it means is you're taking the ownership rights, like the economic rights, the governance rights in a real-world asset with productive real-world value. You're putting it on a public blockchain, and you're inviting investors around the world in various different markets to buy into that. But because of the technology, you're able to fractionalize it, which means that an asset or an investment that otherwise would have a high barrier to entry can now have a very low barrier to entry. And that does two things. One, for asset owners, it opens up access to new capital. But two, for investors, it gives them the opportunity to buy into investments that they would never have been able to get a hold of before because of those barriers to entry. That's why I think tokenization is particularly important, backed by the technology behind blockchain, and in particular in the context of Islamic banking and finance, which is underpins everything that we're talking about today. In markets that are pan-Islamic, which are predominantly the high-growth emerging markets that you can think of right now, those markets are ripe for this sort of disruption, this sort of technology to bring real value to real people that need it in markets which are politically complex, which have high currency devaluation, or in other ways make it very difficult for people to protect and grow their wealth. So that's why it's important. That's why it's important to Islamic markets, and I'll stop there.
Perfect, thanks. So Ranveer, you work with a lot of companies from different sectors, across different sectors, in terms of like advising them to execute digital strategy. So out of curiosity, what are some of the most common pitfalls financial institutions face in designing and executing a digital strategy?
Yeah. First of all, good afternoon, everybody. Nice to be here and nice to share the stage with both of you guys. To answer your question, I think the biggest pitfall I see is most businesses underestimate what digital transformation takes and what it's all about. They view it as a singular technological upgrade, going from version 1 to version 2, and that's about it.
Right.
When in actuality, it's a business shift. It's a shift in mindset. It's a shift in the way that your business is going to grow within the 5 to 10 years ahead, not just the year that's in front of you. And it's also about understanding that agile methodologies, especially in the development stage of digital transformation, is absolutely central. I think the biggest pitfall is that businesses don't really see that, and they just think, oh, okay, I'll go from version 1 to 2, and I've transformed, and that's really not it.
Right. So what can Islamic investment firms or Islamic financial institutions learn from that? Like, what should they take note when, because digital transformation, I mean, I read a McKinsey study that only 30% of banks really successfully execute their plan, and you have the remaining 70, they either experience cost overrun or a time delay, or essentially fail in executing the strategy. So what can Islamic financial institutions, Islamic investment managers learn from that?
Yeah, good question. I think that fundamentally it's very important to set a strong base. What I mean by that is to have a very solid period of discovery where banks or where Islamic investors or banks or whoever it may be do a very deep dive research into where they stand currently, what their infrastructure looks like, what their business looks like, and what they want to achieve at the end of all of this, right? Because when you do the discovery with an aim in mind and you take a month, take 6 weeks to do that, it's a lot easier to then have a bunch of options that are on the table and be like, okay, this option will enable this will enable this, and this will enable this. Now, that doesn't mean that, it still can't go off the rails or it still can't fail. Nothing is going to be perfect. But this, having a strong base, sets you up for the remainder of the process. And again, going back to what I said earlier, understanding that sometimes things need to move in an agile way is very important as well, so that you have an adaptive mindset and you can go through this process in a way that works best for your business. Yeah,
I think the mindset is crucial, isn't it? Because it's about a cultural shift as well, a fundamental cultural shift when it comes to digital transformation.
Yeah.
So Gareth, you guys, it's in different markets. And obviously, in terms of like implementing or executing a digital strategy, regulatory clarity is also so vital when it comes to adoption, especially in the space that you operate in, digital assets, right? So how do regulatory frameworks kind of support compliant and scalable technology solutions?
Yeah, I mean, regulatory frameworks obviously are crucial to mass adoption. So you can't have, for example, okay, so here in the UAE, they have a very mature virtual asset framework and regulatory body called VARA, the Virtual Asset Regulatory Authority. We're fully licensed by them. They allow us to do a lot of cool things, on-ramping people to virtual assets, selling virtual assets. But the problem with global adoption, or one of the problems, is there's still a distinct lack of trust when it comes to crypto and virtual assets. I mean, you all know this, right? It's how do you distinguish a credible project with real value that's actually doing something good for Islamic people and Islamic societies versus a rug pull, pump and dump, I want to get in and have 1,000x green candle and get out and ruin lots of people and take everyone's money. So this is why it needs regulation. And the degens out there in the crypto space will say, no, we want everything to be decentralized. We don't want any banks getting involved. But you need the regulation in order to get mass adoption, in order to get people to understand how to use virtual assets, how to buy them, how to trade them, and how it can actually be valuable to people. So when you're thinking about investors and asset managers placing funds, you need the regulation in place. You need then that institutional adoption, and they don't come. One doesn't come. The second doesn't come without the former.
So it's really getting licensed and getting regulated is one way, but what else do like institutions like yourself can do to sort of like reassure the market or sort of anchor your in a way integrity, I suppose?
Sure. So there's a couple of things. One, in terms of what are regulators, right? It's just like a bunch of people sitting around a table thinking out like, okay, how are we going to regulate this thing?
Right.
So what we do is we just sit very closely with governments and with regulators, demonstrating that we're doing something that's good for the world, in particular in Islamic markets, and then help influence the regulation. And you just build it out together. And that we've done that in some markets out in Southeast Asia, in the likes of Indonesia. We're doing it in Malaysia. We've got licenses in Pakistan and Bangladesh that no other crypto exchange on the planet today has in the way that we do. So it's about working with the regulators to put this in place, whilst always going back to why we exist in the Islamic space, which is to build something which is based on Islamic economics principles, which is exactly what we're doing at Fireside Chat, which is it's about creating a virtual asset platform which is fair, just, equitable, gives people the equal access to buy into assets in the East and in the West. And so if you're doing something fundamentally good for Islamic people in Islamic markets, and you're sitting side by side with the regulators, you will influence them and you will help shape the regulation, which is what we're doing.
Romy, do you have anything to add when it comes to like regulations or?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with what you're saying. I just think that, the key thing is trust in this economy. I mean, I'm not very familiar with the crypto space, if I'm being honest, but I do believe that.
Neither am I, to be honest.
Yeah, but I think the future of Islamic finance, I think DeFi, decentralized finance, does have a place in it. I'm curious to see how and when that might be the case, especially because we have a lot of, Muslim populations that are either unbanked or underbanked. And I think decentralized finance could be possibly one of the things that fixes that.
So of course, when we talk about Islamic finance, Shariah-compliance really is the cornerstone, right? We talk about compliance. And throughout the day, we've heard a little bit about like AI here, AI there. Ranbir, I want to get your 2 cents on how you think, AI can be leveraged to ensure, compliance or streamline decision making and improve investor confidence in this space.
Yeah, so first I want to say that I think AI should be used as a complementary tool.
Right.
Because Sharia scholars, investors, and decision makers and business leaders are still essential, right, to give that human touch, to also ensure ethical finance, and have that layer of difference between what is still an imperfect world of AI. I mean, it's great, it's powerful, but it's not 100%. With that being said, I would say that, a lot of the language models can automatically read and scan documents and contracts for Sharia compliance. You can create AIs that help you navigate through the world of Sharia compliance in real time.
Right.
Right? Because when you scan through these things, it's very easy to make a mistake, especially if you're reading them with human eyes, but the AI can make sense of that for you if you train it in a certain way. It'll help you a lot with the world of sukuk and takaful insurances as well, especially making sure that those remain in a compliant manner for both the stakeholders, both the insurer and the insuree as well.
Right. Gareth, I know you mentioned RWAs is something that you guys are most excited about. I'm just wondering if there are any other, say, like tech trends that you foresee would happen. And this question is also for Ranbir as we wrap up our session. Any tech trends you anticipate or are excited about in the next, say, 5 years when it comes to Islamic investments?
I think that the obvious main one, which people have been talking about now for like 5 years plus, is blockchain. And a lot of people talk a lot about it, and there's not a whole lot being done, specifically in the Islamic space, which is what we're trying to address.
Right.
So the great thing about blockchain is, it's an immutable database. It can't be hacked. It's great for building applications which depend on trust and depends on transparency. Of course, there's lots of these different use cases in Islamic finance and investing space. When it comes to tokenized real-world assets, which is enabled by blockchain, this is where you have the opportunity for a Muslim person in an Islamic market to buy into the fraction of Dubai's real estate market, for example, just in a few clicks. Emaar or Damac build a $10 million high-rise block. You tokenize that into fractions. You put it on the blockchain. Any investor around the world can buy into it. Any of the economic upside in that property that goes up, any economic upside in that property, that investor will immediately see those gains on the chain. Doesn't matter who they are, no one in the middle mediating. It's like fully transparent, and you don't even need to trust it. You don't even trust people. You just trust in the technology itself. So I think blockchain and tokenized real-world assets are particularly interesting for the Islamic investment space, and I think you will see a lot more to come in that sector.
Great. And Ranbir, what about you?
Yeah, I mean, I'll split it into 5 years and 10 years. I think within the next 5 years, the role of AI is going to become more central. For example, small shifts in the markets are so consequential, the 10th decimal point. And I think investors, equity people, capital markets people can leverage AI to track those movements and really, capitalize on the absolute minute market shifts. And I think there's going to be more of that within the next 5 years. Some of the big guys are already starting, even outside of the Islamic finance space, but I think it's going to become a lot more normal. And then I think within 10 years, I'm just going to add on to what I said earlier and build on what Gareth said, which is, I think, blockchain, tokenization, and decentralized finance. I think there's going to be a role for that, although let's see how the regulators and regulatory compliance modules will adapt. I think that's a big thing.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Just very quickly, anyone have any questions? If not, then thank you so much, Gareth and Rory.
Thank you.
That was most
Pleasure.
enlightening.
Thank
Thank you.